So today's episode, Joy, we are talking about healing from parental hurt through grace. Man, sisi wote, we come from different families, different backgrounds. Some of us will say, I grew up with very good parents. It was very toxic for me. But looking at that, many of us are walking out of here hurt. We are in pain, we're in wounds, and it's really affecting our mental health.
So we've all been raised in different backgrounds, and unfortunately, and I normally tell most clients, especially who we have to actually touch on such a topic, it's unfortunate that some of us are in therapy because of how we've been raised, unfortunately, because of the societal norm that gives that, especially depending on where you come from, there are so many societal norms that have given some people, leeway in the name of respect to actually, treat people a particular way. Or also, there's toxic traits that come along with family, and the problem is not so many people talk about them. And so many people have been wounded, have been hurt, and they keep it to themselves because you don't want to talk about, your dad who hurt you, because they provided for you, they took care of you, like you're where you are because of your parent, but there's so many other emotional wounds that you have to carry, and you feel even guilty. And I think this also comes with a lot of guilt, because the society says that you have to respect your parent, if you don't respect your parent, but then what about how you feel, what about so I think this is something that it's very important, and the only way to, honestly, I say the best way to heal from a parental wound, and even because sometimes even some parents may not even know that they had to. They're like, I raised you and that's enough, but
that?
Then
oh my god, let me just say, and sorry to cut you short, it's sad that we will never hear the word sorry from our parents, because they hurt us along the way and they did not realize it, and they will never tell us sorry.
That's so true.
To me grow up all these years, 25 years later, 30 years later, you're still carrying the same hurt, and it's sad because many people are in therapy because of that, because you're trying to go back to your childhood trauma. Man, you're battling a lot of things, and now that you're older, now is when you're realizing, by the way, my parent was toxic. By the way, my dad was toxic. By the way, my family, they did a mess on me.
There's so many people struggling with depression right now. I'm thinking right now they're struggling with their identity because they've lived their life. Maybe the parent didn't even know that they were actually going through depression. So the closest person who first-hand experienced the depression was actually the child. So because at that time when you're a child, you don't have a choice. You have to actually experience all that. So you've gone through pain. You have had to have defensive mechanism for you to survive that environment. And so when you're grown, you live a very mistrustful life. You can't have a good social life. Your relationship are all scattered. You basically do not even have a proper social life, because when you're young, you were treated so badly. But then the people who hurt you didn't even realize that they did that. The problem with that situation is that even now, even if the person is still the same, you can't necessarily change them.
That's true.
And that's why grace comes in. That's why grace is the only thing that can stabilize your life in every aspect. Being able to see yourself in grace helps you to know that even if I have to deal with this, I don't have to be guilty. Even if I have to deal with this, I don't have to feel like I'm alone anymore. Like now, if I actually address this, and sometimes I may have to put boundaries with my toxic parents, I'll not have to feel alone anymore. I can actually have a normal life, and I can be better from here.
And let's take it back to, of late now, there have been where now people are coming out to say, by the way, this happened to me growing up, this is where I'm coming from, I hope you understand me. But let's take it back to our parents, because sometimes we may point fingers and say, our parents were toxic, you hurt me mom, or you hurt me dad. But let's take it back to also where they grew up, because we are always told that they also came from toxic parents, so it flowed down to them and they passed it on to us. Let's talk about that, because those are things we don't talk about. But if you look carefully, ilianza from your grandparents, your parents took it, and then now it came to you as well.
Such mental health situations are always, let me say, generational, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
It's always generational, where a hurt person hurts another person. So you were hurt by somebody, and then, you know, they were also hurt and everything.
Yeah.
So I think, but I like the fact that these days this therapy, where actually people can break from that. You don't have to hurt your children.
Yeah.
You don't have to be unconscious about how you treat them, or treating them as if they're useless and everything, because you also are carrying those useless traits.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
useless feeling.
And maybe the other day I saw a post.
Yeah.
Someone says, be very careful how you bring up your kids, because their childhood is in your hands.
Yeah.
Be very careful, because their childhood lies in your hands. So how you bring them up is how they'll always say, but then my childhood was like this. My childhood was, because it's in your hands.
That's so true.
We have to do better.
For kids, they don't actually have a choice. You know, the experiences are according to the environment you expose them to. So if the environment is toxic, they actually grow. And I've had to address that even in therapy so many times, and help people realize, you know, that was then, that you didn't have a choice but to experience that, but now you have a choice on what to experience right now. And we have to constantly condition them to realize you're not in that place where you can be you can be treated badly. You're in a place where you can choose how you're treated. You don't have to live that kind of life. So I mean, you know,
Okay. Let's take it back to people who were molested by their parent. You know, someone who has grown up with so much hurt and saying, you know what, I will never even respect you, I hate you. You know, people who think, maybe if I had an opportunity, you know, those people who say, even if my dad dies now, me, I wouldn't care, because they have lived in that hurt, they have carried that wound for so long. How, when someone like that comes to therapy, how do you allow them to see grace in that heart, in that wound, and knowing sometimes that they can tell you don't understand, it has never happened to you, so you don't get me. There are people who are always hurt like that. So let's talk about that.
I think one of the first thing you always do in therapy, first acknowledge that that's the worst thing that can ever happen to any child. It's the worst thing, and it was never meant to happen. The thing is, the world is so broken, things just happen, you know, and it's not anybody's fault, you know, and that's why grace comes in to actually make things right, you know, so that we can see ourselves away from the things that put us down, that make us feel useless and everything. The world is already broken, the people are already broken by the world, and people do crazy things in this world. And I think one of the things, you know, especially people who've been molested, they feel like it was their fault. They were supposed to protect themselves, you know. They were supposed to, you couldn't have fought for yourself at that time. Even they're angry at God, you know, at what happened. You can never ever like speak their feelings out of what happened. It happened, it was the worst thing. Validate their emotions, and whoever is hearing us right now and you've gone through the same thing, I think one of the things that I can let you know is that I was not right, and your emotions are very valid, you know, and you don't have to feel guilty about what happened. Like, it's never any child's fault to go through even like poverty, to go through sickness, or you know, just being treated badly, emotionally abused. You know, people don't know to what level you should actually treat somebody emotionally, because it's just a lack of knowledge of mental health and everything. So like, so whoever is there, your emotions are very valid, and it's important to not feel bad because you feel bad about that situation, and allow yourself to unpack, because there's light at the end.
That's true. And Joy, we can even take it back to us girls growing up. Sometimes, you know, most times we were disciplined by our mothers. Saa zingine kuna vitu they would say to us that later on would affect us, how we grew up, our self-esteem, and that is why we would feel like home haupendwi. So when a boy comes around in your teenagehood too, when a boy comes around and show you a bit of attention, a bit of love kidogo, love in quotes, because it wasn't really love back then, but when you are given attention, you immediately go and give yourself away, because there's at least somewhere where you are now receiving love. And most of us grew up with that, such that mpaka saa you still struggle with self-esteem, you still struggle with people telling you they love you because you didn't grow up with that. I think the beginning of this season you were saying, hey, tough love, we have all received that tough love, instead of just actually being told I love you. I don't even think I've ever had my parents say I love you. I think you can see through actions but not really in words, and they tell you I love you. And so let's just talk about that, because our upbringing has been different. To someone will say, me, I grew up being affirmed. You know, me, I grew up my mom telling me I'm beautiful, my dad always treating me like a princess. When he wetu atukupata hiyo, it was tough. It was World War III. It was war. It was war. Ulikuwa unachapa mpaka unajifanya umekufa. It was war. And when you go back to the house unasema, hata si mamangu. You know, because it was so hard, man.
So sad. Unfortunately, love has not been a generational thing. It's not something that has been passed on from family to family and to family. So the only thing that has actually been passed on, especially in Africa, is mostly violence. You know, unfortunately, yes, there's that aspect of discipline, but then there has to be that sense of balance. We can't be so inclined towards discipline so much, and then we are not balancing that aspect of love. So that now, even the discipline should actually be founded from a place of love. Like, love has not been something that has been emphasized in Africa. Like, it's a sound of weakness. It's a form of, it's until like when somebody tells you God loves you, you're like, it seems so weak. I mean, like, it can't be. But let me tell you, there's no heart that doesn't yearn for love. There's no heart that, no child, no woman, no man, no teen, no person, no young person doesn't yearn for love. And that's why there's so emphasis, this importance for the perfect love that comes through grace. And the grace is the only repairing aspect. Because now if we start connecting on things that we cannot change, the thing is, as much as there's that lack of love, there's some situations that can never change. When even in therapy, there are things we cannot change. But now, when somebody is in this space of grace, we can be able to change their hearts, to be able to help them see that there's love that's above every other love. There's a parent that's above every other parent. And now that you're conscious, you're no longer a child, you're no longer under somebody's authority. Now you can actually start learning and allowing yourself to create that environment that helps you know that you're loved. Because the mind, the thing I normally tell people, the mind does not necessarily know that this is my upbringing, this is my, it doesn't necessarily differentiate. Wherever you expose your mind, that's what you experience. Whenever you expose yourself to grace, that's what your mind knows. And the thing is, I normally tell people, your mind is never too late to experience love. Your mind is never too late to be conditioned to a different direction. So you're not a victim of what happened to you, or from that sequence of from generation, that negative sequence.
That has been,
you can actually break it by choosing what you expose your mind, and then now you can start a new sequence where you love your children because you first experience that perfect love.
And I think we will continue this in the next episode, where now we look at the healing journey. How does that look like? Where does therapy come in all this? And how does grace crown it all? Because at the end of it all, if I will be able to, in this festive season, if I will be able to sit down with my parent without having to look at them at a particular way, or wishing death upon them, or just being so bitter and hurt over the years, how do I walk in grace and extend love? Because like we said in this season 3, who hurt you? And that hurt could have come from your mom. Maybe they will never tell you they hurt you. They will never say I'm sorry. But what we're saying is grace always defines you differently. Let's go back to where it all began, and that's in Christ. But we're going to continue this episode, because when you're talking about parental heart, we can't exhaust it.
That's so true.
It's so broad. It's a lot. But we're going to continue this episode in the next week. So please be sure to tune in, and thank you so much for your continued support. Until next time.
Bye-bye.